Hey, welcome, Carm Capriato, Remarkable Results Radio, episode 463. Let's go back 35 years ago to 1984. My guest gave a speech entitled, "Give Me Your Tired and Broken Cars," kind of as a state of the industry address for ETI's fall meeting. Now, 35 years later, listen to Mitch Schneider explain the relevancy of the state of the industry address he gave then and how he sees things now.
What has to happen before we recognize that we are not serving our own best interests by being independent? We are not serving our own best interests by not sitting down together and finding out what we have in common instead of what tears us apart. There are people within that tent that are thinking to themselves, and I guarantee this is the truth, there are people in the tent that are thinking to themselves, well, we invite all of them and it's going to be harder for me to make a living.
Welcome, aftermarketers, to Remarkable Results Radio. Listen to learn just one thing from today's episode on your journey to remarkable results. Hi, friends. Carm Capriato here, the Aftermarket Podcast guy. You know, Remarkable Results Radio is so proud to partner with NAPA Auto Care in the upcoming 2020 NAPA Expo. Join NAPA in Las Vegas, April 6th through 9th, 2020, to discover the latest innovations in the auto care industry. Now, I've seen a partial agenda, and trust me, this is an event you do not want to miss. Contact your NAPA store to learn more and register now. Hey, in the business of the aftermarket, success can be seen and learned from all angles. Many of us are always in search of information to boost our learning and improve ourselves and our business. Let's call it going to the next level and then some. As our world hits us at the speed of life, there's a lot to digest, especially in the business of the aftermarket, where trends, opportunities, new tech, and breakthroughs, they sprout in all directions. The only way to help more climb the stairs to remarkable results, to help all ships rise, is if you share. Now, you know I'm on a crusade to get this podcast to as many aftermarket professionals as I can. Please forward my newsletter or share this episode from your listening app. Sign on to the mission to improve your aftermarket one shop at a time. Now, I know your colleagues will see undisputed value in the conversations we have here and the stories that will help shape their success. I receive a steady stream of input that confirms the value of our format, content, and wisdom transfer. Hey, Mitch Schneider's here for the second time. Mitch is an award-winning journalist, former shop owner, and soon-to-be published novelist. Now, for more than 37 years, Mitch operated Schneiders Automotive, a successful six-bay family-owned and operated service facility in Simi Valley, California. Mitch has recent great news on the biggest challenge in his life as he has taken on primary myelofibrosis head-on. He's in recovery mode now from a bone marrow transplant. Now, Mitch is a survivor of this rare procedure, and I'm so glad to have him back to have another conversation with him. Hey, find the talking points and the bullet points on Mitch's speech from 35 years ago and Mitch's bio at remarkableresults.biz/E463. Now, you can go check out Mitch's other episodes. Look for the link there. As I said, the first speech Mitch ever gave was 35 years ago, and he gave it 12 times to major aftermarket Fortune 500 companies. It really started out his speaking career. Now, he basically served up that he was angry. He showed his frustration, and he is now reflective at the state of the industry today. It is sad to say that not much, he says, has changed. Listen and learn about the issues then and now, and some discussion on what we need to do to remedy. Are you on board? A warm welcome to Mitch Schneider, round two. Hi, Mitch.
It's good to be here.
I do want to talk about your incredible ordeal over the last 3 to 4 months, but not right now. And I want you to come back and, you know, as you continue to get healthier and improve and smell the roses, I want to bring you back, okay?
That's a given. That's for sure.
I know for sure. So here's the deal. You and I were in episode 415, and we talked about you as a legacy influencer in the industry. And one of the cool stories you told was when you decided to get up there and do your first speech. And what I took away from that, Mitch, was this most incredible thing. And you said to me, and I can't remember if it was on the episode or it was off the episode, you said, Carm, 35 years ago, and nothing's changed. And so I never forgot what you said.
I've gone back to that speech often and reread it and reread it and reread it again. There are two things that really amaze me. One is that I was prescient enough at that time in my life to really understand the industry and its problems so well. And two, that realistically, if you were to go down the laundry list of all the things I included, because nobody told me that there were industry taboos that should not be addressed, that weren't supposed to be talked about, they're all still here. I mean, you want to go through stereotypes, stigma, technician shortage, dangers of chemical exposures. Hello. That just cost me 6 months of my life and 5 years of a disease. Dangers of chemical exposure, physical danger, high stress, inadequate compensation, unrealistic beliefs that there would always be somebody there to fix the car, scarcity of good mechanics and technicians, where they come from, the explosion of technology. It's just insane. It's just, and the thing that disturbs me more than anything else is that I have this profound belief that if first the industry wanted that fixed, it would have been fixed a long time ago. And I know that sounds like a terrible indictment. And the second is that if we who struggle in this industry really wanted it fixed, we would have fixed it years ago. Because if it was a car and we were driving in it on the interstate or on the freeway and it ran this poorly, we'd pull over to the side of the road, get out and fix the damn, because nobody would want to drive it the way it is.
I'm sitting here stuck up against the wall with your words. And
I'm sorry.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And all I can think about is, well, okay, we're independent, so we can't get together. We can't make a decision. We can't fix. We can't climb out. We can't remedy. And you sent me this list, and I read down this list, just like you read down just half of this list. 35 years ago, you were talking about these things that are facing us today, challenges, hills to climb. And one of the thoughts that I want to ask you is, you were asked to go and give this speech, and you probably said, well, why me? I've got nothing to lose. Let me get it off my chest. And you did.
Oh, yeah. It was a wonderful example of benign neglect. I was given the opportunity to give this. It was more or less at the last minute, because as I mentioned before, I was told that else they had chosen initially, and they had at the last minute had decided not to do it. As I also told you, they didn't expect much. I was told they didn't expect much because...
Yeah, but they may not have expected much, Mitch, but I think you hit them upside the head. Were they listening?
Oh, yeah. It started my writing career, so somebody was listening. I was asked to give that speech 9 times in the 12 months that followed, all over the country. There were people that heard that message, and there were a lot of people in that audience at ETI that were former mechanics and technicians who had migrated to positions within the market, significantly greater than where they had started, because our industry has always been a portal industry for the aftermarket, an entry level for other positions in the aftermarket. And it affected them very deeply, not enough for something to happen as a result. I think I thought it was a 55-minute call to action, in all honesty. And it didn't result in the kind of action that I hoped for. And subsequently, over the last 35 years, maybe I've become cynical, maybe I've become jaded because nothing's happened. Or certainly nothing's happened as quickly as it could have or it should have. We're still talking about the shortage of technicians today that we were talking about in 1984.
But Mitch, when you brought up that bullet and say, hey, we got a technician shortage, and you spoke to the graying industry back 35 years ago, which is worse today, and how technicians have a chance to leave for all the right reasons then and now. Were there call to actions? Did you say, hey, listen, here's how I think we could remedy this? Or was it just a bullet point and we as the industry had to figure it out? I mean, you wrote about this for the rest of your life. And, I guarantee you had call to actions. Who was or wasn't listening?
I don't think the aftermarket, beyond the repair community, was listening. I suggested in the body of that particular address, the Give Me Your Tired and Broken Cars address, a couple of things. First of all, I felt very, very strongly that we needed a national association, federation, organization of automotive repair technicians and owners and managers to help us speak in our own words. than have the rest of the industry speak for us or invite us to support their agenda for us. So I really believed strongly that we needed our own agenda. We needed our own an instrument, that we needed to create our own instrument, our own voice. And that's never really happened. I actually started before social media, before the internet really became as powerful a tool as it is today. I started a federation of qualified technicians. It grew legs. It had feet. It just became so expensive to support because we didn't have this, what you and I are doing right now.
What was it, like a bulletin board or something?
No, it was a formal organization. It was designed to be a guild, really, of automotive repair community professionals. I really believe very strongly in licensing, certification, perhaps beyond ASE. I think ASE does an incredibly important job. It's all we got, so we got to embrace it. We've got to love it. But my wife can't walk into a nail salon and have somebody work on her fingernails that hasn't been to school for hundreds of hours and licensed by the state of California to do that. And yet any bonehead can go to Sears and buy a $300 toolbox, and there's another bonehead that'll employ him. I mean, and there's nothing less than my physical health, which I'm very, very concerned about these, because I don't know if he worked on the brakes of some vehicle that's on the freeway alongside me and didn't know what he was doing. Can you imagine getting on an airplane without knowing that the people that worked on that airplane were certified?
And everything that they did on that plane has been recorded and registered, and the serial numbers. You're right. We're killing more people on our vehicles today. And it's probably, maybe that's the wrong thing to say. Maybe there's a lot of driver error and we can't seem to find enough proof of the failure to repair correctly. But I hear what you're saying about licensing. Have you thought deep enough as to if this thing really rallied, we got behind it and rallied, who would be the, before the government comes in and does this, who would be the agency that would help create or support it?
You have to look much further than the AMA, the American Medical Association or an organization like that. We should be able to regulate. Think about it for a second. We don't have any best practices that are published. We don't have any generally accepted, if you were an accountant, you'd have all generally accepted accounting principles, right? Yeah, we don't have that. We don't have anything like that. How is that possible? And you can say we're independent, and that's wonderful. I mean, it's great to be independent, but not to the point where it's self-destructive.
I know we're going kind of deep and off of an angle, but I appreciate the dialogue here. Let me think about the DIY thing. Sure, I could cut my hair, I guess, and maybe look behind me. I know I can do my nails on a DIY basis, but if I wanted to get it done professionally, I have to go to a licensed operator, a licensed individual. The DIY business for the vehicles back in the day, it was easy to fix a lot of this stuff. And a cottage industry started, which means you could buy oil anywhere that you'd like, even in a department store, and change your own oil. And you still can. 280 million, I'm not sure the exact number of vehicles on the road. It's a big marketplace. There's 300 and some million people that need to get their hair cut and nails done and all the medical things. I wonder if the industry, the industry as it exists today is too powerful in one particular way. Think of the number of stores that are out there from, the big companies that sell auto parts. You go to a licensing thing, where do they go?
I don't think you're going to dismantle the do-it-yourself industry. I think that DIFM, the do-it-for-me industry, is going to be there forever as well. I think the important thing is for we as professionals to recognize that there's more to that than just calling yourself a professional. That there's some, you got to do the work. There's some work involved in doing that. And a part of that work is demonstrating proficiency, right? Which is what most of these certification and licensing apparatus are geared to do for cosmetologists, for nail specialists, for one of a number of, there's so many, every profession in the world seems to be licensed and regulated with the exception of you and me and what we did and what others do. And I don't get it. I just don't understand it. I didn't understand it 35 years ago. I don't understand it today. I don't understand what prevents people from seeing that. I mean, I don't think we're trying to take anything away. We're not trying to say to people who are going to fix their own cars anyway that you can't fix your car. But what we are going to say is that if you're going to work on a car and you're going to do it professionally and you're going to get paid for doing it, then there's a certain standard you have to agree to adhere to, certain principles that you've got to recognize.
Hey, it's Carm here, talking to you about what the NAPA Auto Care Center program can do for your business. Now, you probably already know the NAPA brand is the most recognized and trusted name in the automotive aftermarket industry. In fact, studies show that 95% of consumers recognize NAPA and associate it with quality parts, service, and technical expertise. So why not complete a Pro Image upgrade and take advantage of that? Pro Image is a co-branding program for the exterior and interior of your shop. On the outside, it includes the NAPA colors and distinctive NAPA signage. While the public may know you as a reliable, locally owned business, a Pro Image upgrade helps set your shop apart from the competition even further. It's also a visual signal to customers and potential customers that you and NAPA are partners. Most importantly, Pro Image really works. This co-branding opportunity has helped NAPA Auto Care Centers across the country increase their car counts and sales. In fact, those that have completed a Pro Image project enjoy an average 23% sales increase during the first year. Pro Image upgrades are also available for the interior of your shop. A Pro Image interior upgrade transforms your customer waiting area from merely utilitarian to warm and welcoming. The goal is to maintain your shop's independent identity while enhancing the customer's experience. You can get a free look at what a Pro Image exterior and interior upgrade could look like by visiting the NAPA Auto Care members site and clicking on the NAPA Pro Image link under the NAPA Pro Image tab. Or contact your local NAPA Auto Parts store. Your servicing NAPA store can tell you more about Pro Image, plus the hundreds of other reasons to become part of the NAPA Auto Care family, the largest network of independent automotive repair shops in the country. Mitch, with all the talk on data ownership and what do we do with the data, and the OEs own it, and we're speaking to the car owner and say, hey, you need to have this data. The thought about it is, okay, we get the data, but now who gets the data? Why do they get the data? Are they certified to get the data? Quote, are they licensed to get the data? If we need to have a code to turn an electronic part on one day from the OEs, all of this gets into sophistication, the whole cybersecurity thing. It's almost like before the government starts tackling who owns the data and what can we do with it, it's almost like you're suggesting the licensing thing almost needs to start bubbling up and say, before the government gets involved, we can do this.
Yeah, but there has to be a we. I mean, who is the we? So we have to have people within the industry that are willing to take the point on this kind of an effort and to make it happen. I think there are so many people in the industry that are loath to address the fact that there are different levels of performance within the industry. I mean, the same guy who's going to be in charge of data acquisition in the shop, the kind of work that you're talking about doing, is not necessarily the same guy who's going to do a timing belt or a chain or do deep or rebuild an engine, or a valve job, or replace a head gasket, or whatever, and that there are different levels of performance, and we need to recognize that as well. What keeps bubbling up in my head constantly is that instead of trying to figure out all the reasons why it won't work, why don't we get together and try and figure out how it will work or how we can make it work? We know what's wrong with the industry. We know we can't attract the kind of kids that we need to attract to go into this profession and remain here. Because anybody could fix a car today, especially today, more so than 35 years ago. Anybody that can work on a late model connected vehicle can do any damn thing they choose to do. If you've got those skills and you understand how the machine works, you can do anything that you want to do. So leaving the industry and getting a job to pay more money is not exactly chore. It's not hard, when you think about it. And when you think about the number of people in the industry, really highly qualified technicians that are getting paid what they're worth, and I'm still not sure that that's true. I'm still not sure that they get what they should get. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that they don't. And and whose fault is that? That's another issue. That's probably a fourth podcast. But these are all things that we need to be cognizant of. We, not anybody else for us. There's nobody going to come in with a white hat and a mask and hand you a silver bullet and say, here, I got the fix. All you got to do is ... It's not going to happen. It's going to be hard. It's going to be work. We recognize that, but we can't make this work. This is not going to continue. How long is this sustainable, do you think? Or are we looking at a future where the only people that can afford to attract and retain technicians are within the dealership network? If independents are loath to do that, where would you go?
To a point, you're right. If the OEs own the data, they won't have any reason not to have it, use it, authorize their people, do whatever they need to do with it to fix the vehicle. And if we need to be trusted by the OEs to do their work, we have to have the same training and or the same skills and abilities.
Hold on a second. Doesn't this sound vaguely familiar? Doesn't this sound like R2R?
Yes.
Wasn't that a battle that was supposed to have been fought and won?
Yes. Well, we're starting all over again, it seems, with a different. It's got a different bow on the package.
I'm sure you remember. It's a rhetorical question, and I apologize for it. But do you remember when people within the industry itself, people within the repair community, were so polarized and so adamant that they were right, that meetings became ugly? It's a microcosm of what's going on in the country today, really. But I mean, what has to happen before we recognize that we are not serving our own best interests by being independent? We are not serving our own best interests by not sitting down together and finding out what we have in common instead of what tears us apart. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, there was a gentleman in the industry named Charlie Schwartz. He ran the largest rebuilder, parts rebuilding company in the country. We were both at an SAE meeting, Society of Automotive Engineering meeting. I had just spoken, and he pulled me. He was a scary little guy. He really brilliant. He was scary bright, but pulled me aside, threw me up against the wall, quite literally, and said that I didn't understand. And I said, what is it that I don't understand? He says, what you don't understand is that when the automobile came into being, it was a toy of the rich. It was a play toy. It wasn't for mass anything. What made it for the masses was Henry Ford and mass production and the fact that it became inexpensive. And he was telling me basically that by forcing the industry to charge what we need to get paid in order to pay our technicians enough so they want to do this for a living, we were going to take that and make it a toy of the rich again, because it would become unaffordable for the masses to get fixed. When flat rate, when hourly went up to $100, $80, $90, $100, that's how long ago it was, instead of $125 or $135 or $150 an hour. But the fact of the matter remains that the average automotive repair technician still doesn't make as much as the average factory worker in an automotive, for Ford or Chrysler or Tesla or anybody.
And I believe you said that back 35 years ago.
I did.
And it's still true today.
I did, and it is. The angst for that speech really came out of the fact that I couldn't afford to buy any of the cars I was working with. At that point in my career, I had a house, I had 2 kids, and if I wasn't a pretty good mechanic and technician and wasn't able to resurrect a number of vehicles, a string of them for a lot of years, I would have been walking.
It seems to me that this speech was a diatribe from you as to what you want the industry to grow up and be, or what you. It's amazing. Listen, we're not paying our techs enough. We have high stress. There's scarcity of good mechanics. There's nobody joining the industry. You were almost saying, I wish. What I
was saying is, why is this the way it is? We were almost 100 years old at that point. We were over 100 years old as an industry. How is it still as screwed up as it was 100 years? I mean, I couldn't understand why these issues were not being addressed. I have a much better understanding of that today And I formed my own hypothesis, but God knows it's gotten me in an ocean of trouble from time to time, including death threats.
That's too bad, and it's a shame that we could be so polarized over any one issue that someone would do that. But you said something a few minutes ago about, possibly independence has hurt us, but, with over, six-figure 200,000 shops, 250, whatever the number is of the number of shops that we have in our country, there's that many different ways to run a business.
Yeah, but you can be interdependent. That's one step above independent. And it's a higher level of consciousness. It requires a higher level of consciousness in order to be interdependent and to recognize what common goals we share and how that would benefit all of us, at least to some more than others, perhaps, but it would raise the boat that much higher than certainly it's being raised today. There are better shops today, perhaps, than there were 35 years ago. There may be more of them. I'd like to think I had something to do with that in the 35 years I've been pounding away and trying to, breaking big rocks into little rocks so that people could understand the principles of business in general and the fact that they are in to serve the motoring public.
You've had an awful lot of time recently to think, and I know you've probably not thought about this, but you're a wise man and you see things from some great perspectives. What do we have to do to find those next steps that, and I don't want to say the words unify, but help bring it together so that we can accomplish more?
We have to start communicating on a whole different level, I think. And believe it or not, I did think about this. When you've just had 6 days of chemo, when that chemo hits 3 days after the last round, you think about really bizarre stuff. One of the things you think of is the fact that there were all of these little skull and crossbones on a lot of these cans and bottles that we use every day and didn't pay any attention to them and still don't. You can come out to California. You don't have to go further than that. You can walk out the door and go to a shop. No safety boots, no safety glasses, no gloves, no masks. When I went to see my oncologist and I had my first interview with him before I was diagnosed even, his first question was, did you ever work with, when he thought he had an idea of what it was, he said, have you ever worked with any petrochemicals, heavy metals, or solvents? Only since I'm 2. I was born in this business. I was raised in it. Turn around and say, we have the right to buy it and use it, but really? It's still okay to put it in a bottle and sell it if we know that it's going to cause cancer? I have a personal stake in this now. There are some industries that are labor intensive. If you're a cabinet maker, your skill lies in your hands and in the limited amount of equipment. If you own a McDonald's franchise, you can't screw the French fries up because it's equipment intensive. Our industry is equipment intensive. It's labor intensive. It's physically intensive. It's liability intensive. It's environmental responsibility intensive. All of the above. And it doesn't matter whether you are the owner, although that's ultimately where the responsibility ends, or the porter, the guy who's sweeping up the shop. Everyone has a responsibility to be responsible. Everybody has to be able to respond. I was so angry when I wrote that. There was just so much anger bubbling to the surface that came out in that speech. And I tried really hard to mask it. But if you listen carefully, it's there. It was a great frustration because I literally had planned to leave the industry subsequent to making that speech. I figured I couldn't do it anymore. I had 2 bright kids that were going to be able to go to college. I wanted to put them in college, through college, to give them all the opportunities that any parent wants for their children. And I knew I couldn't afford it. Not only could I not afford it because of what I had chosen to do for a living, I was working with my father. At that point, you're never worth what you're worth when you work for your parents, meaning no disrespect.
Well, here's an individual sitting across from you that knows exactly what you just said, why you just said it, and what it means. Mm-hmm. I
have a theory. Here's my theory, Carm. My theory is that we're all so busy just trying to survive that it's not going to work. I mean, I think we've talked about this before. I've written about it extensively before. There's a psychologist named Abraham Maslow, Maslow's hierarchy,
sure, of course.
Pretty famous, Maslow's ladder. And I don't think the majority of people in our industry are above maybe the second or the third rung on the ladder. Physiological needs, the need for security, they certainly haven't gotten to the need to belong yet. We're ignoring that whole part of the industry. We're talking to the people in church about the people that aren't in church. Instead of trying to figure out ways to make this more inclusive and to invite them inside the tent where we are, there are people within that tent that are thinking to themselves, and I guarantee this is the truth. There are people in the tent that are thinking to themselves, well, we invite all of them and it's going to be harder for me to make a living.
And that's what's wrong. Because, and this, there's more business, there's enough business for everybody.
Oh, there are plenty of broken cars. The hardest part of being in business is figuring out which cars you don't want to work on. The most important word I ever learned being in business was no. No, we can work on that, but I choose not to.
Somebody picked up the phone, big company. We want you to come and speak to our board of directors. Would you dust off this speech from 35 years ago and give it again?
I don't even know if I'd rewrite it. I think I might just do it exactly the way it's written. Yeah, I would. I sure would. Of course I would. The thing that was frustrating to me is that they were all big companies and associations. I've spoken for Dana Corporation. I go down the list of all of the Fortune 100 and 500 companies that heard that speech.
Do you think in any way that some of it resonated and they did change their approach to how they went to market, but there just wasn't enough of them and it wasn't deep enough and strong enough to really affect change? Or is it that the fact that we just don't have that overlying umbrella, that we don't have the AMA of our industry?
I think it's a combination of both. We don't have an overriding body to help guide us, to help develop best practices, to help us with generally accepted accounting or automotive repair practices. We should have it. And I don't understand why there isn't more of an interest to create that. I think there are companies in the aftermarket and groups within the aftermarket that are sincere in their desire to see things get better. But it's interesting. 35 years ago, I would suggest that, and I'm not a sociologist, so it's hard for me, I don't have any data to back this up, but I would guess that the companies within the aftermarket were stronger and that the groups weren't as strong. Today, I think the groups are stronger and the manufacturing companies are much weaker.
I got this wild thought. Because the groups are stronger and you only have to go and talk to a dozen of them to cover a really large chunk of the industry, what's your new role going to be now that you're well and you're feeling healthy and you've sold a shop? Do you see a role here for you?
We're presupposing a level of altruism within the groups, plural, that may or may not be there. Can you say competitive advantage, boys and girls?
I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, they need to be sold. They need to buy in. They need to understand the value that we can all benefit from by doing this. But could you be an advocate for, if you will, the quote-unquote new way of doing business, the new aftermarket, the new AMA for shops?
I would have to really work hard to say no, that I wouldn't do something like that, because I've been working at doing exactly that for the last 35 years.
I'm not trying to give you a job here.
No, but I think it's the responsibility. It's a collective responsibility that we all share if we are serious about seeing things get better.
I see your platform. It's right in front of me. The speech from 35 years ago. I heard your passion. You're on the road to recovery. You're, well accepted in our industry. You're articulate. In fact, we're going to do a podcast on the book you wrote. How exciting. I guess I'm just trying to come to a conclusion here by saying we need to have a point of a plow, an advocate, a call to action of sorts, someone who can coach and rally the troops to hit the end zone.
We were really close to accomplishing at least some of the goals that I spoke about in 1984. And it got shot down at the highest levels. I got shot down with it.
If it was a different time, yay or nay? Were you ahead of your time?
Oh, I've always been ahead of my time. That's a curse. That's a curse that, when you see things that nobody else sees yet, you got to wait for everybody else to catch up.
All right. Well, you're the visionary here. You got to have a visionary to lead.
You know how you can tell the pioneers, right? They're the ones with the arrows in their back.
Yeah, I'll go first.
I would love to see this industry become everything that it could be and should be because of the work that we have been tasked with and that we have accepted. Nothing less than the safety of all of our clients collectively. We have to recognize that there are more ways to the top of the mountain. There's more than one path to the top of the mountain, and that sometimes people can get there by different routes, but we have to understand and establish what the top of the mountain looks like. And that's what's not happened yet.
God's good, huh?
There's a 35% chance at the facility that I went to, which has got a very high percentage, one of the highest percentages of success for stem cell bone marrow transplants around. Think about that for a second. Can you imagine having 65 jobs come out right? Right now, I fit in that 65%. That means that 35% of the people aren't as lucky as I am. And you'd be a fool not to recognize that. The fact that that I feel as good as I do, and that you and I are having this discussion right now, and that I'm 139 days into my transplant, post-transplant, God is good.
And the odds that 65%, does it because of the number of days that you are in recovery, if you will, and feeling good and getting stronger every day, do those odds continue to improve and get better? I'm not a mathematician, so I don't really know the answer to that question, but I know that as of today, I'm still 100% immunocompromised. Perfect. Okay, that's good. That's important. Okay, so you survived it, just like you have everything you've ever taken on as a challenge. And I'm not sure congratulations is the right word, or the fact that God is good. God is good. Stay strong. Mitch, thanks for being on episode 2. We're going to get back and we're going to do a couple of more. And I don't care how long it lasts, as long as we can figure out how to change the world here. I'm with you. You pick up the phone, I'll answer. How's that? You can't get anything better than that. Thanks, Carm.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the Premier Automotive Aftermarket Podcast. Until next time.